out manhunt continues in New York City for the suspect who gunned down United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside of this hotel on Wednesday morning. And there could be key evidence that was found on the shell casings. The New York Post reporting the words "deny, depose, and defend" were written on those casings found at the scene. Those words are strikingly similar to a title of a book that condemns the insurance business.
What I would say is somebody with a familiarity with guns, and particularly this gun, looks to be a rare type of gun, and that's a data point that the police can chase down.
Police are calling this a targeted attack, saying the masked gunman was waiting for several minutes before he opened fire at Thompson on the sidewalk. The gunman then takes off on foot and hops on an electric bike, disappearing into Central Park. Investigators are still looking for a motive and say they're searching Thompson's hotel room and interviewing his colleagues. That gunman was spotted at a local Starbucks before the shooting. Sources telling Fox he bought a coffee and something to eat and threw some wrappers in the trash. Now evidence in this case.
Anybody who's come in and out of that area, they're going to know who that person is. Facial recognition, they're going to go through trash cans, alleyways. They're not going to leave one stone unturned.
So there was an assassination, and no one seems to care. I don't know if this is a troubling sign in American politics or a hopeful sign, but we've gotten a lot of gun violence directed against powerful people, and people just do not give a fuck about it. We're all used to gun violence being done against children in schools, or against teachers, or against minorities in either the grocery stores, their synagogues, or their clubs. But when a politician gets shot at, or when a CEO gets shot at, then we would expect a little bit of change, and the media does cover it more. However, the vast majority of Americans could not care any less than they do about this stuff. So it's just hilarious. And this is going to be kind of a shorter segment. I don't have much to add. I think insurance companies are parasites that are just sucking the lifeblood out of this country. And this man, I mean, if you want analysis on why insurance companies are bad, you can find it elsewhere. I'm not really going to do that, but just suffice to say, insurance companies are responsible for hundreds of thousands of people's deaths, and just like killing one person is like a drop in the bucket compared to the harm that insurance companies do. So this is something that I wanted to read about. Are you surprised at the lack of sympathy and outright glee the UHC CEO has gotten after his murder? Why or why not? The lack of sympathy and outright glee. Okay, first of all, he's a CEO. Why do we need to be sympathetic towards him? Not surprised. Fun fact, the reward for info on the shooter is up to $10,000. That's not even enough to cover the average family deductible on most plans. It's true. $10,000 is really low. LOL, $10K, not even his family gives a shit about him. I read the $10,000 is less than 3% of his bi-weekly paycheck. Ain't that some shit? I've never wished a man dead, but I've read some obituaries with great pleasure. Sometimes you go to the funeral just to make sure the motherfucker's in the casket. I'm not celebrating this guy's death, and I'm not wishing for more of it, but it has gotten to a point where I'm starting to wonder if stuff like this is the only way things will change. I no longer believe the system will ever self-correct. So, these comments are pretty funny. He died quickly, unlike all the folks who were denied care. The shooter has gotten more coverage than UHC ever provided. None of the reaction online surprised me. People die all the time, and I give them no sympathy. I know nothing about it, and I'm not going to feign sympathy for this person who's only famous because they're rich, and are rich only because they let their customers die. I have sympathy for anyone who is a customer of a health insurance company that denies claims at 2 times the rate of the average insurance company. Let's see, if we take a look at this. So obviously Reddit is more like left-wing than the average part of the internet, I would say. But if we take even a look at this Fox 11 Los Angeles video that was posted 2 hours ago, it's too bad they go through this much effort for millionaires, but not for average citizens. In 2019, UHC's denial rate was 8.7%. Thompson became CEO in 2021, and by 2022, the rate of denial had increased to 22.7%, so almost 3 times. We regret to inform you that you did not receive prior authorization for treatment of lead poisoning, therefore your claim has been denied. Look at how little they care when us commoners suffer and die, and then look at how deterministic their language surrounding this event is. Now they know they can be hurt. So, okay, let's play this video, and then I'll get into a bit of analysis, and we'll just like wrap up this very short segment.
Sorry, but you can't get me to feel bad when shitty things happen to shitty evil people. Like, while under that CEO's leadership, they deployed an AI model that had a 90% error rate to automatically deny healthcare claims from people who all had families of their own that are sick, dying, and poor, trying to get life-saving treatment. 90% error rate, and they knew how flawed the system was and kept up with it because they don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't even give a fuck about him. The meeting was at 8 a.m. and they resumed the meeting after they found out he was murked on the street. They continued business as usual. Yeah, that motherfucker chose to be in his position of CEO knowing that he had millions of Americans' lives in his hands every single day and decided that the profit, like whatever they were paying him, was enough to have that on his mental every single day. He didn't give a fuck. He does not give a fuck. Two wrongs don't make a right, blah, 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 blah. His stack of bodies is 1,000,000 times higher than the one singular hitman. You're seriously gonna look me in the face and say, well, he had a family. So did the thousands of people that he said, oh, I actually don't care if you live or die or become broke and go into thousands of dollars of debt because I am rejecting your claim. He would literally take the money that he saved on letting you pass away and take his family on like a nice vacation. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? How many families lost a loved one because they couldn't afford the life-saving treatment that they needed? How many? Thousands, yeah. There's no sympathy for any of those people, but we're supposed to feel bad for him? Like, what do you... I'm so confused. You pick and choose? Another thing to be noted, there was literally a woman running out of the hotel at the exact same distance to the hitman as Brian was, and the man completely let her go. It was a targeted attack. I don't believe he's a flight risk. I'm walking around the streets and I'm not scared for my life because I don't profit off of people's pain and suffering. And he chose that position. I don't know what you want me to say. I don't know why you want me to sit here and cry about it. I'm crying for the people that lost family members because of him. So, sorry, but you...
So just before we get into the real analysis, when she was talking about how these other CEOs that were a part of the meeting that he was going to resume the meeting anyway, like they're just heartless. It reminded me so much of this clip from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Look at those chips.
Do you win?
I do win.
It's completely random, Bingo.
I know it's random.
Totally random.
I have a winning percentage that
does.
defies logic.
You win more often than the other people.
More often than the other
He
people.
gets more diagonals than anybody.
What?
This doesn't make any sense.
Oh my God. What? Cedar Sinai. Okay, we'll be right there. Bye.
Is this a joke?
Mayuki. Yoshi tried to commit suicide.
What?
He tried to commit suicide. Cedar Sinai. I gotta leave. I'll be back. Get the coat. Get the coat. Keys. Keys.
It's in here. It's in here.
Let's go.
Wow.
Suicide. Jeez Louise.
Oh, wow. I just saw him last night. I had dinner with him.
You did?
Yeah.
Did he seem weird?
Well,
Was he nervous? Was he anxious?
Could he have lost face or been ashamed or humiliated or anything? So, what should we do?
well, we're here.
We are here.
That's true because, I had to really finagle to get out tonight. I'm kind of happy to be anywhere.
And we can't leave the house. They're gone.
You don't have keys.
I mean, we don't know the alarm code or anything.
And a pizza is coming.
Got a pizza
Pizza coming. Yeah, I got a pizza coming.
And he tried. He didn't actually kill himself. He
That's
just
true.
tried.
That's a very good distinction, because tried, if he said he tried to, that means he didn't, which means he's alive.
Okay.
He's here.
Thank God.
Pair four is best.
I'm going to see what else is in the fridge.
Okay, so anyway, I just thought that was so hilarious. It's like, so, he's dead. What do we do? Well, we're here. I mean, I had to cancel a lot of appointments to make this meeting happen, so let's just go on with it. Anyway, that's just so funny. So, yeah, a lot of people don't give a shit, and the obvious answer is just because health insurance companies are not the greatest companies. Like, they are the kind of the interface between you and your doctor. They are called the middlemen for a reason, because they quite literally are the middleman between you and your doctor. Like, you can't just pay your doctor, you have to pay your insurance company, and your insurance company pays your doctor. So basically, insurance companies don't really serve any purpose. They just serve to, like, collect money from people and then refuse to, like, try, and then they work as hard as possible to stop themselves from giving any of that money back. They try as hard as possible to prevent any of that money from going back to their customers. That's like the point of insurance companies. I think that insurance is a good idea in general, where you do pay in a little bit at a time, and then when you need it, it will, like, that money will be given for you, just because, like, that's kind of the benefit of living in a society. Sorry to go all Joker mode on you, but we live in a society, and we should have kind of social insurances. I just think that should not be a for-profit venture. I think that should be something that the government takes over and is a non-for-profit, like, business, basically. Not business, but aspect of the government. Medicare for all. I mean, pretty simple. That's, like, kind of simple analysis. What I think is a little bit more interesting is the fervor and the actual, just, like, pure hatred that we are seeing coming out of this situation. So what I want to talk about is how, like, look at all of these comments. It's too bad they go through this much effort for millionaires, but not for average citizens. People repeating, like, more leftist talking points, where it would seem like in any other context, this would be something that leftists talk about, where the wealthy are taking profits from poor people, from the non-wealthy, and they're, like, maximizing their profits while paying their workers as little as possible. So, like, the denial rate increased by almost 3%, like 3 times. Look at how little they care when us commoners suffer and die. Then look at how deterministic their language surrounding this event is. Now they know they can be heard. So what I think is really interesting about this is that it's almost like this country's been so heated up to the point that a tiny little spark will ignite a huge uproar. And people are feeling very fed up. They're feeling that their paycheck just isn't covering enough of their lives. It's not enough for them. It's like, it's too thin. They can't afford all of the food they want. They can't afford to go on vacation. They can't afford all of the healthcare that they want. They can't afford to live where they want. All of these systems serve to just extract as much wealth out of people as possible, and that is just crushing them. It's crushing their spirits. And so when there is this violent reprisal against one of these aspects of the system that serves to crush people, that is like a flashpoint, and people are drawn to that. People will look at that, and it really serves to kind of galvanize everyone. And people are now up in an uproar about insurance companies, and yeah, why is my insurance company so bad? Like, you do so much violence upon us, your customers, and a little bit of violence of one guy getting shot a few times gets this much coverage. That is unfair. So as bad as insurance companies are, I do think it's more interesting to talk about the pressures that people are feeling, why there is this uproar in this one specific instance, and how can leftists and Democrats in the future try to harness, not even in the future, like currently, how can leftists and progressives try to harness this anger, this resentment that has been building up so much because of, again, capitalism is an inherently unstable system, and it puts so much pressure on the working class. It extracts as much wealth as possible out of them. And that pressure is going to build and build and build. And then we have a situation like this where it is kind of a classic like Robin Hood scenario. And there are so many aspects to this scenario that makes you almost root for the guy who did the assassination. The fact that he was like very professional, he just like fired a few bullets and left. Like, people use the word cinematic. You have the perfect angle from the CCTV outside of the hotel. You have the face of the shooter, and like it's an attractive white guy, and he was like smooth. He wrote like messages on his bullets. What was written on the bullets? Delay, deny, defend. I think it was like delay, defer, defend, or something was written on his bullets. Like, that's kind of another like almost a romanticized aspect of it too. So the fact that he like rode away on an electric e-bike, like, there's so much that makes people identify with this shooter and not really care at all that the CEO of a insurance company died. So anyway, I think that like what this shows is people do care about the economy, and if a Democrat or a progressive candidate could get up onto the national stage and say, I am going to fight against these corporate institutions that have been sucking you dry for decades. You can look at the effective, your effective pay and how that's decreased compared to corporate profits over the past 50 years. I'm going to fight for you, and I'm going to claw that back to make it a more equitable situation for you. I'm going to slash their profits. I'm going to tax the hell out of them. I'm going to use that tax to actually create healthcare. I'm going to destroy the private insurance companies, because the private insurance companies serve to only try to make money off of you. And I want insurance to work for you. I don't want to make money off of you with insurance. I think that that message is going to blow everything else out of the water. If someone comes in to some kind of national election with that message, they're going to skyrocket ahead, because it's not a left, it's not a right message. In terms of American politics, Americans view politics as left-right if you're racist or you're not racist. That's essentially what it is. Trump, he's a little bit racist. He'll say some edgy things. He's not woke, right? That he codes conservative. I mean, his policies are also economically conservative, but American voters don't really give a fuck about economic conservatism or anything like that. They just think, are you going to trigger the libs? And it's the same with like leftists. Leftists do want to have more populist economic policies right now, but like leftists and Republicans want to have populist economic policies. So if you have a populist economic policy and you make that your main focus, then it doesn't matter whether you're woke or not. It doesn't matter whether you support trans people in sports or not. What matters is you are talking to people. You're talking to people in very specific ways that is very meaningful to them, and you are promising broad, sweeping, effective changes that they're going to feel a real change in their lives. And so when we talk about guys like Cenk, who says, I saw a poll and it said that the vast, like 57% of Americans don't support trans women playing in women's sports. So that's why Kamala Harris should campaign against trans women in women's sports. He's like insane. When Bill Maher says that the NAACP is telling black people they shouldn't travel to Florida, and that's why Kamala Harris lost the election. He's insane. All that matters is you have real economic populist policies, and everything else will follow suit. So, once again, I think this is like a big flashpoint, and people are so fed up against this system that they are even willing to cheer on violence to try to scrape any kind of power that they can get from these corporations that have just been sucking them dry. They are just straight up parasites. Okay, so we can close this. Majority report. Do not worry podcast. What's this? Oh yeah. Leftist Mafia. Shout out Leftist Mafia. So I think this is interesting. We just talked about like economic populism, and I think that's the answer to everything. I think economic populism is the answer to everything. But you will get guys like Shoe on Head, or not guys, but people like Shoe on Head and Asmongold and Shank and Bill Maher, who say that the left is too pure and they're driving people away because of how libbed up they are. And I just don't agree with that whatsoever. I think it's like 100% an economic issue, and since like both parties are offering shit economics, then the secondary, like the second point that people might look to is stuff like, well, if your life is going to be shitty economically and you're not going to ever make anything of yourself or like be able to afford a house or family, then at least if you're a guy, you can be conservative and like beat up women or rape women, or say that successful women should not be successful and they should be subservient to you, and the left is like taking something from you. So it's all like aggrievement politics on the right, and I think that's like the vast majority of the kind of stuff that Shoe on Head and Asmongold and Shank and Bill Maher all do. But I'm kind of curious to see this from Jimmy the Giant. So let's get into this. And I really want him to be talking about populist economics, because I think that if he doesn't talk about populist economics in this video, then like it's a bad video. But let's check it out.
Alright, bruv. It happened, boys. Donald Trump won. Where do we begin? Right, this one's for the geezers. This one's for the boys.
Vote for Donald Trump.
Thank you for doing this, seriously.
We need Trump back, and we need him back bad.
I want to thank the Nelt Boys, Aiden Ross, Theo Vaughn, Bustin' with the Boys, and last but not least, Joe Rogan.
If you look at the data, how many young men voted for Trump, bruv, it's insane. Political pundits are going to go into it with their big words. They're going to say some fancy shit about demographics and I don't even know the words. And I think it is incredibly explainable. It's incredibly simple. What it is simply, all right, if you really want to know, as someone who would have voted Trump back when I was in my fucking...
Economics, please tell me it's economics. I mean, it's also the real thing is that, okay, if we're going to be talking about like teenage boys, like 18 to 20-year-old boys, and if they didn't vote for Kamala Harris, it's because Kamala Harris isn't cool. Trump's kind of cool. But then again, if you like, the reason Kamala Harris isn't cool is because she doesn't have any policies that she actually believes in. They're all like watered down, means tested, trying to appease the corporate donors and trying to be as populist as possible. Like you're never gonna bridge that gap. And so when you like compromise yourself on so many different issues, being like, I think that we should recognize the importance of immigration, but also I'm going to deport as many immigrants as possible, or I think we should recognize the importance of like big banks and big money and insurance companies, but I'm going to give you like some tax credits to buy a house. It's like, that's not landing. You're trying to appease too many different groups, and in the process, you're not appeasing anyone. Like, Trump will just repeat a narrative over and over and over again, and that actually draws people onto his side when he says so many times that there is a border crisis and we have so many illegal immigrants like eating cats and dogs in the heartland of the United States. That's going to cause people to believe that. So like, you can just say a narrative and people will get on that narrative. But again, the big issue with Kamala Harris's campaign is that she didn't have anything that she believed in, and that she was an unlikable candidate. If you have a Democrat who has good policies, they're automatically going to be likable. If they have good policies that they believe in and they're confident with those policies, they're automatically going to be way more likable than Kamala Harris is. I mean, Tim Walz was the most likable candidate by far. And the reason he was likable is because he believed in his policies. And the most unlikable Tim Walz ever was during this campaign season was when he had to defend policies that he didn't believe in, like defending the war in Gaza or defending, like, kicking out immigrants. Like, he doesn't believe in that stuff. And when he was talking about that, it came off as extremely inauthentic, and it was kind of like a gross spot because you could see the machine turning Tim Walz and making him support things that he doesn't actually support.
Right-wing era. It is simply this. In the eyes of young men, the left are pussies.
I think this picture is a perfect picture of a left-wing male. You know, they want a guy with...
I mean, once again, I wouldn't say that the left are pussies in the eyes of young men, because honestly, I don't think that young men understand what the left is. I think what you can say is that they didn't think the candidate was cool. But I think if we're going to be, I think in every talk about the election, we need to distinguish between conservatives and conservative politicians and the left and Democratic politicians, because I mean, Kamala Harris wasn't running on any of that shit, and she was still cringy. She wasn't running on being trans. She wasn't running on being woke and saying Latinx. She was running on being like kind of a lived up American, where she, like, an elite class of American, basically. Like, that's kind of the aspect that she was running on, and that's not pussy coded. That's just like, you are an elitist coded.
The lisp, zipping around on a lime scooter with a fanny pack, carrying his birth control, supporting his wife's career while he works as a supportive stay-at-home house husband.
I know it's crass, I'm sorry, but it's true. That is the perception. If you are a lefty, you are weak. You're drinking your soy lattes, you weigh 9 stone, you're vegan. It's all bullshit. Look, I'm just gonna hold it. It is all bullshit. But that is how the right have made young men perceive left-wing politics. When I was deep in the pipeline, mate, if I had an inclination that I might be woke or I might be a lefty or something like that, it would literally be seen as, like, emasculating.
Now it's time for Lefties Losing It. Here we have a former Democrat turned MAGA man, Adam Francisco, trying to conduct an interview when an enraged Kamala-loving soy boy launches an attack. This is hilarious.
And I know this is dumb. I feel dumb saying it, but it's true. But why do you think all the right-wingers are always talking about, I don't know, men being feminized or emasculating, or like, why do they call them cucked libs? Like, why do they use beta male? Why do they use these phrases? Why? Because young men are, and this is a hot take, brace yourselves, a little bit insecure. I know, lads. I know I shouldn't say it because I'm trying to win the boys over, but just fucking bear with me because I was there. When you're a young lad, right, you are trying to...
Okay, men are insecure in general, and conservative men are insecure to, like, the next level. I mean, Vosh says it all the time, but, like, fascism and conservatism hinges on sexual insecurity, like male sexual insecurity. So, yeah, he's got a point there. Men are insecure. Young men are insecure. Conservative men are insecure. What I would say is that if you're going to make the argument that, like, the right is framing libs in this one way, and they're saying that if you are a woke left progressive person, you're going to be effeminate. That's fine. Like, conservatives do say that. And the response would be that, like, you shouldn't. The response for the left isn't saying that if you, like, drink soy milk, you should stop drinking soy milk. If you are a stay-at-home dad, you should get a job and say that your wife needs to stay at home. That is capitulating to the right-wing framing of, like, the left. The response to the left would be, let's get some policies out there and a politician that will push these policies to get people on our, like, to get support and get that popular support. And guess what? If you are saying that we're going to get rid of insurances and there's not going to be any more for-profit insurance in this country, then people are going to forget about Charlie Kirk saying that if you vote for the Democrats, you're a woman, you have breasts, like you drink soy milk and the soy gives you breast tissue. People are going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? I just don't want to pay extra money for my health care. Like, you're saying my deductible is going to go down by like $1,000 a year or something? I'm going to vote for you. Fuck this shit. My coverage is going to be universal coverage. What? I don't have to pay money when I go into the hospital. It's paid by my taxes. I don't give a fuck what you're talking about when you say that voting, like, Democrats are womanly. Like, people just aren't going to care at that point. Like, again, okay, so let's just, like, be really specific about this. Republicans don't give people any meaningful benefits unless you're like a millionaire or a corporation or something like that. But if you're just a working person, the Republicans don't give you anything meaningful. Democrats give you like extremely tiny meaningful things. So like Biden made it easier for you to unionize. That's actually like that's really useful, but it doesn't affect that many people. Like, unionization is still at a really record low in the United States. Kamala Harris was saying that I'll give you $25,000 if you're a first-time home buyer. Wow, that's great. It affects like some people, and it is a small, meaningful change to them, but it doesn't affect that much people, right? So, on a whole, the Democrats and the Republicans don't offer you anything meaningful if you're in the working class. And since neither party offers you anything meaningful, you're going to now go to like your second set of criteria. Okay, neither party is improving the conditions of my life. Which party is going to make me feel better? And if you are white, if you are a man, that's probably going to be the Republican Party, because the Republican Party will scapegoat immigrants, and they'll be like, we'll get rid of immigrants, we'll get rid of gay marriage, we'll get rid of abortion. That's going to inherently make your position in society as a white man more powerful, because women aren't going to have as much agency if they don't have abortions. Immigrants aren't going to be able to rise up in society as much if they're afraid of getting deported. Like, black people aren't going to be able to, again, rise up in society if they're being discriminated against, and they're like, colleges are rejecting them, job offers are rejecting them due to their names or where they're coming from. So that's what Republicans offer you, and that is a big reason why young men go over there. Like, Democrats will be like, if you're gay, I guess we'll support you. But like, Democrats didn't even do that in this election. They didn't even say that we're going to be pro-Palestine in this election. So it's like the Democrats are like, all of these minority groups are going to vote for us anyway, so we're going to try to get conservatives by saying that we're going to be strong on the border, we're going to have a lethal military, and that's just not working for them. So like, that's why we saw a lot of people not voting for Democrats and like Republicans picking up seats.
To figure out who you are, what you want to be. And so you go on your journey, you know, you pack your bag, you jump on a camel, you travel to the desert, you climb up a mountain in search of answers. In reality, you're on your phone having a shit on your lunch break, but, you know, it feels like you're on this sort of journey of discovery, right? And so you're a young lad, right? So you look around, who do I want to be like? For me, I wanted to be like Tyler, the Creator. I loved the bro. Look at this young lad. What a cool dude. Look, with his skateboards and his hoodies and Supreme. When I was a young lad, I did parkour, right? And this is a sport, I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically you go out, you jump on walls, and you're hanging with the bros doing that. And it's fucking sick. Us freerunners, we were all pretty useless. Most of us were like, you know, we'd have a part-time job at Tesco's while spending all our hours doing parkour, and really we were like the dropouts. A lot of us didn't go to uni, etc, etc. But then along comes Tyler, the Creator.
Okay, now what about your lyrics? What about him?
What are you saying in your lyrics?
Nothing. Shit to piss old white people off like you.
Is that right?
He is exactly us, but a skateboarder. He does the same thing. He films videos, he's making art, doing all this shit. But he is this incredibly successful, driven individual who achieved nothing that anyone in that world had ever done. And so this young Jimmy, he would look at Tyler and be like, fuck, I want to be like him. Look at how I was dressed, bruv. Look at this outfit. Tell me I didn't want to be Tyler, Creator, of course. And you know what this is called, right? You know what this is called? And it's funny because it'll piss off right-wingers. I'm sorry, lads. Please stick with me, please. This is called representation. Ooh, my friends. Put down your copy of The Guardian, my friends. Listen. Representation, right? Identity politics. It's a thing that the right originally really rallied against. They were like, why is every white character now black? Despite the right, kind of claiming they hate identity politics, they have enjoyed lots of its fruits. Simply put, representation, the reason people bang on about it and why it's everywhere and why people think that the white man is being replaced by black people in film, I mean, it's firstly, it's not. Relax. What is happening is that in the past, when you saw black guys in a film, typically, very often, they played gangsters. All the time. So many black actors were gangsters. It was just a common trope. And so, like, if you're a young black lad and you're sort of watching films, media like we all do, and you see a film, and you see that every black guy is a gangster, that might create like a self-fulfilling prophecy in culture. That might tell you everyone that looks and acts and dresses like me, they're never the main character good guy. Nah, they're always the gangster selling the drugs, getting killed in the film. So like the point of representation, and yeah, they overdo it sometimes. Does every single advert need to be a multicultural couple with the lady wheelchair? Is to show people like you doing aspirational things.
Tyler, the creator.
So let me pull this one back, right? So if you're a young lad and you're looking around and you're trying to figure out who you are, what you want to be in life, and you probably grew up.
Yeah, like representation, it's overstated how important it is. Like, it's kind of been co-opted as a almost cynical use of, it's almost been like co-opted by corporations to just cynically say, look, we are woke, we have black people in our media now, we have black people in our commercials, we have like X amount of black characters in our movies, we have X amount of women doing things in our movies. It doesn't actually matter if they're black, it doesn't actually matter that they're women, it has no relevance to the story, but look, there's a woman here, there's a black person there, we're woke, come like watch our movie or whatever. And that is like a cynical use of representation, but that doesn't change the fact that it is important for people. Like, I think that it is extremely important to be able to watch movies, watch television, and see someone that you can relate with. And obviously, representation gets better the better the media that is representing that person is. And it's better if the characters are better, if the story is better, if there's a reason for the person being like a person of color, and maybe that's a part of the story, and you're like, okay, I can relate to that exact same thing that this character is describing, how they get treated by white people. That's like how I've experienced something like that before. So I think that is important, and it's important to do good representation at the end of the day. That's it. Just acknowledge the fact that we do live in a multicultural society. The world is multicultural at this point. Like, society is getting homogenized with globalization. So just understand that people from all different cultures can have access to whatever you're putting out. And yeah, it's not a bad idea to reach out and get different perspectives, to add diversity to your movie so that it's not just like 3 white guys making a movie and they're in their own little bubble. Like, get some different perspectives. Diversity is a good thing in general. But I'm curious to see how he brings this idea of representation back to how the left failed young men. Because once again, I wouldn't say the left failed young men. I would say that liberals failed everyone. And because they failed everyone, young men went to conservatism. And that's not really the left's fault, because the left is pushing for like economic populism, and the libs are just unwilling to do that at all.
What, watching Tom Cruise just fucking stick it to him? You loved Jackie Chan, you loved like Vin Diesel. I mean, you grew up on that. You're playing Call of Duty every day. Then when it comes to looking for role models, who are you more likely to connect with? Are you more likely to connect with Steven Crowder, Matt Walsh, Joe Rogan, or are you more likely to connect with Owen Jones? Now look, I'm really sorry. I'm not trying to fucking throw up.
Okay, but dude, those were horrible examples. Steven Crowder is a fucking, I mean, he's a pervert, dude. Domestic abuser, at least verbally, and probably like closeted trans. At worst, he's done like sexual harassment against his employees that he employs. And Matt Walsh, he's a fucking he's like a Christian nationalist freak. Matt Walsh is so gross. He's advocating for like 14-year-old girls to get married. Joe Rogan, he's like, okay, I don't know. Like, Joe Rogan's brain is melted out. I guess people still watch him and they still like him, but I don't even think I don't think they unironically like Joe Rogan anymore. I think anyone listening to him is kind of taking it with a grain of salt and like, yeah, Joe Rogan's a dumbass. Like, honestly, I think what did it was Joe Rogan doing that comedy special and how horrible that comedy special was. I think maybe I'm in a bubble right now, but I mean, Joe Rogan is the exception, but Steven Crowder and Matt Walsh, they're so gross. I don't know if anyone takes them seriously other than like religious fundamentalist freaks.
Owen Jones under the bus. I love Owen Jones.
Okay, and then if we're talking about like leftist male role models, sure, we probably could use more people that specifically have to do with like men's issues on the left. I mean, Hassan is a great example of that. And I think that on the right, what do you have? You have like Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate. And maybe Tim Pool, he kind of does that like men's rights activist thing. But yeah, in general, like if you're looking for sex advice podcasts, that's mostly going to be on the conservative side of the media ecosystem. Once again, just because like for the vast majority of people, like once you get out of high school, you start caring more about economics than your place in the dating hierarchy. And I do think that there's way more like lefty economic influencers than there are lefty like dating influencers for high schoolers.
Does some very good stuff. But Owen Jones is an important example because he appeals to a different type of person. He appeals to more middle-class academic type of person. And this is the thing, right? So where we see the pro-Trump side, it tends to be young working class men and also not like graduates, not with degrees. The academic young people, they tend to be more left-wing. And that is a separate topic. We can get into why that is. They are a different type of person. They surround themselves with different types of people. And so when you're a young lad and you go on the internet and you see that all of these people that you kind of want to look, be, and act like, you're at least inspired by, these guys who have gone out on...
Okay, but you haven't, like, Joe Rogan, I don't think he's a great example. He's too old at this point. Like, if we're talking about the 2024 election for teenagers, I really don't think Joe Rogan's a good example. Steven Crowder and Matt Walsh, I don't think anyone... I don't know, guys. Like, feel free to roast me in my comment section if you think I'm wrong, but are there really teenagers looking at Steven Crowder and thinking that's who I want to be? That's who I want to act like? Like, maybe 10 years ago. Because when Steven Crowder was doing Change My Mind on college campuses and he was 10 years younger, then maybe that was actually a thing where people are like, oh my god, he's owning the libs. These fucking, like, pink-haired woke SJWs are just getting wrecked by him. They're getting so triggered. Like, maybe 10 years, but now he's on Rumble. Now he's had, like, heart surgeries. He's fat. He's divorced. Like, he's a loser now. He doesn't even have views. Matt Walsh is just a fucking freak. Like, he had that What is a Woman documentary where he acted like a complete I mean, he just acted like an alien, like completely unsociable with everyone. And then his second movie, Am I Racist? That's been a big flop. I haven't heard anyone talk about that. I don't think young teenagers are looking at Matt Walsh and being like, oh my God, that's so lit. Like, talk about Aiden Ross, talk about like Kai Cenat or people like that. That's what teenagers are looking at. Those are who teenagers are looking towards right now. Like, yeah, I think that he's talking about Steven Crowder and Joe Rogan because that's who he looked up to when he was a teenager. I don't know why he included Matt Walsh. Like, dude, if anyone's looking up to Matt Walsh, then they need psychiatric help immediately.
On their own, made a career, paved the lane, got strong. They are inspirational to you, and they all happen to be in this ecosystem of conservative politics.
Joe Rogan sat down for a surprise podcast with Elon Musk that was released today, where the pair attacked Kamala Harris and the Democrats.
And I think, you know, you can ask why. I would say, like, the gym bro stuff, it makes sense. Young lads want to improve their lives. They get into self-help. They want to get bigger, more muscly. They want to be able to talk to women, meet a wife in the future. That gives them a sort of innate political bias where, because they have managed to improve themselves, the ideas of self-made man and, like, the sort of libertarian arguments, they start to appeal to them.
I know people, they work 3 jobs, and they live next to somebody who doesn't work at all. And the person who's not working at all and has no intention of working at all is making more money and doing better than the person that's working his and her ass off.
Donald Trump's like, I employ maids that are working 3 different jobs. They're working at the 8 to 4 p.m. shift on my one property. And then they're working the 5 to 12 shift on my other property. And then they're working the 12 to 8 shift on my third property. They're working 3 jobs and they're working way harder than me. I'm just sitting there and I'm getting paid way more than they are. They're dumb bitches, right? Am I right, guys? I don't do anything. I have no intention of doing anything and I get paid way more than them. Donald Trump literally just describing himself.
And it's not going to happen.
I managed to lift myself up, improve my life. The state isn't going to help me, so why should I support it helping you? You need to fix your own shit. And then by then you look at Trump. Now Trump is like that fucking... I don't want to call him a giga chad. He's not a fucking giga chad. I mean, look at the guy. He's the shape of a fucking rugby ball. However, he is a very brash and bold character. He has a very masculine personality. He doesn't give a shit. He got shot at and got up and said, fight, fight, fight. I mean... To young men, that is a fucking wet dream. That's what you... Mate, you want to be that. You want to be the guy shouting, fight, 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 after you got clipped in the fucking noggin. Now, the right wing were incredibly organised. Like, conservative media, Daily Wire, Turning Point.
Man, I just disagree. I don't think that landed with young people at all. Like, Donald Trump is not a guy that young people are attracted to. I'll just put it that way. Like, even Aiden Ross, who basically is like the biggest Trump kiss ass out of all of those podcast circuits, that was awkward as hell, dude. Like, he's like, oh, I got you this Tesla, and it was wrapped with your fight, fight, fight thing. I did not get the sense that Aiden Ross liked Donald Trump, man. He even kind of dressed like him, but I still did not get the sense that he wanted to be him. I think it's just a recognition that Trump represents power, and Aiden Ross wants to be in as close proximity to that power as possible. So, like, it's basically just like a Gollum getting the One Ring. And all of these podcast bros are trying to kiss that one ring to try to get a taste of that power. Not a perfect metaphor, I'll just say that. They're like the Nazguls. They're the 13 Nazguls that have, what is it? Their souls were ripped out of their bodies and now they're cursed to wander the waste forever in service to Donald Trump. Okay, this metaphor has gone on way too far. But anyway, I don't think young people saw that assassination and were like, let's fucking go. And guess what? The reason I say that is because, say it with me, everyone, the most important issue for voters was the economy. Fight, fight, fight. That doesn't do anything for people. That that didn't move the needle. Trump almost got his brains blown out, and it didn't move the needle at all. Okay, so I'm going to be hammering this narrative until my dying day. And I'm sorry, because it makes, I guess it makes content a lot less fun. Because you have guys like Sean Head, you have guys like Bill Maher, you have guys like Patrick Bet-David, you have guys like Cenk Uygur who constantly talk about this culture war bullshit of men don't have a role model on the right. Women are like see conservatives as sexist and they're not supporting that. Or women love sexist conservatives, I guess. That'd be like an argument or whatever. Men love the fact that women aren't sleeping around anymore. Men love the fact that Donald Trump almost got his brains blown out and then he said fight, fight, fight. And these guys all have way bigger channels than I do, so in some sense, that does get more attention, and it gets people that are online to watch their videos, but at the end of the day, that's not going to affect the elections at all. Like, okay, it could have secondary effects on the elections if the primary issue that people are having in their lives, which is the economic pressures they are experiencing, are not being addressed. So if neither party is going to address their economic issues, then they are going to go off of those secondary issues. But I have a great solution for that. We can ignore all of the shit that conservatives throw at us. We can ignore the fact that they say woke men are feminine. Trans women are like have dicks and they want to have sex with your daughters. Like woke men don't lift weights or whatever. We can ignore all of that and just say, I'm going to give you free housing. I'm going to give you a universal basic income, and I'm going to give you free healthcare. Vote for me and you'll get all of that stuff. And guess what? People are going to forget all about the fucking soy shit. So, I don't know. Is this whole video going to be just, we don't have an Andrew Tate on the left? I'll just speed it up, but I don't know. I'm just not interested in like listening to these arguments anymore. They don't make any sense. Like we literally have data that tells us what voters we're most interested in. Like the only relevance, the only thing this is relevant, the only demographic this is relevant towards is the like 18 to 20-year-olds who don't have jobs yet and they can vote, but they're still in high school or college living at home and they don't have any economic pressure. That's the only relevance. That's like the only voting demographic that this argument has any relevance towards, because then that like populist message isn't really going to affect them as much. But you can still say that if you have a politician that's like confident in their message, that is going to be charismatic and that can get like teenage boys to vote for the person. Like if they have confidence.
The way they all made an ecosystem, the way Joe Rogan would interview all of these right-wing pundits and all of them would interview each other, they got along. They made this ecosystem, this network that people can fall into and exist amongst. And so after they had captured that sort of young male demographic, they did what I would consider some really fucked up things. And the one I really want to point to is how they managed to weaponize compassion.
You look at these inner cities and you go, why do they want these problems? Why are they funding these problems? Why do they want drug addicts? Who on earth would ever fund a center to allow people to do drugs? Well, you're looking at a government that wants a system of dependence. To me, I look at the situation and I say, what we're seeing is a modernized system of slavery.
Aiding homeless people is modernized slavery. So it's not the homelessness that's modernized slavery, it's aiding homeless people that is modernized slavery. You know, their main answer is like criminalization. Make it illegal, lock them up, or like Tucker said there, hey buddy, you can't crap on my sidewalk.
Shout out Kyle. He's getting a highlight in this video.
Move on. Okay, well, where's that person going to move on to? They're going to move on to another place where they might end up crapping on the sidewalk. So how do you actually address this? Well, we know. It's not some mystery. Finland has nearly eradicated homelessness. How do they do it? A housing first policy.
There is a reason why the right call lefties like beta males, soy boys. They call them effeminate.
Statistics, how you speak on numbers. Thanks for your time.
Oh dear, that sad soy boy doesn't want to give Kirk a platform, the dude with millions and millions of followers. That makes sense.
There's a reason they attack their manhood. There's a reason for it. Because if they can make the left be synonymous with being a fucking pussy, they know that no bloke wants to be a pussy. Why do you think they're always talking about how the left are cucked and blah, blah, blah? Why do you think they use that sort of terminology? Because it works on young men who are still developing their masculinity and they might be a little bit insecure about certain things. They might be single. They might not have met a woman yet. And so they want to be the type of character that appeals to women and they're scared of being feminine. And it's so perverse, man, because if you think about it, there is nothing stronger than being compassionate. Compassionate is the geezer who sees a girl being creeped on in a club, goes up and tells those guys to fuck off, leave her alone, and then check that she's all right. That is compassion. Compassion is going to war as a young man living in poverty, going to fight the fucking Nazis to protect your wife, your children, and your country. That is compassion. Laying your life down to protect the people you care about. And these don't claim they're fucking Christian. They claim they're Christian. Mate, the stories about Jesus that really resonate with me are the stories of him going in.
This video is kind of jumbled up. I would have a few points to add to this. I would say that when he's talking about how conservatives frame men as sissies, it's like, okay, well, it's interesting to analyze the rhetorical devices that conservatives use to try to keep their audience glued to the TV screen and almost like keep their audience in a cult, make it seem like you shouldn't ever consider a left-wing progressive policy idea or commentator or anything like that, because if you do, you are losing your masculinity. You are going to become feminine if you ever try to listen to progressives. But at the end of the day, like, that is an analysis of conservative rhetoric, but that is not an example of how the left failed young men, which is the title of this video. So at the end of the day, this is the thing. You cannot reach the audience that is listening to your opposition and listening solely to your opposition. So you need to do two things. You need to make your message just as engaging to people as your opposition's message is. So, like, yeah, sure, maybe we should have more men lifting weights. Maybe we should have more leftist progressive people talking about how you can, like, meet women or meet men and start dating and have a family. Maybe we could talk about that more. Maybe that is a market for, like, progressive dating advice or self-improvement advice, like a 13 rules for life, but progressive side. So you need to make sure your content is just as engaging as your opposition's content. And two, I don't know if I said one or A, two or B, you need to cast as wide a net as possible. So he was making the argument that conservatives have this very well-oiled propaganda machine where there's like all of these conservatives, they're on a network, they all do each other's shows, they all go on Joe Rogan, they all go on Theo Vaughn, and they have this like tendrils of conservative propaganda just like floating around in the ether, ready to snatch people up and then funnel them back into like the conservative rabbit hole. That's what the conservatives that's what the conservatives are doing. Leftists need to do something similar to that, which I agree. I think that like there is opportunity for the left to make their content more engaging and create a broader scope of their content to try to capture more people. But at the end of the day, we cannot take someone who is fully ingrained in conservative media that thinks that leftists are soy boys, and if they would ever agree with a leftist, they're going to grow tits automatically and change the way that person thinks by saying like, no, we're not effeminate. Don't worry, we're not effeminate. Saying that we're not effeminate and like capitulating to that framing of what progressive people are is a losing strategy. So I don't think Jimmy the Giant's going to say that, but I just want to preempt that and say that is a losing strategy. And then just once again, like when we're talking about winning elections, that is different from having like these self-help guys. Like you can kind of lay the groundwork if you do have like progressive self-help guys that are attractive to certain demographics that have historically been co-opted by the right, but it is way more important to have a politician with good policies than it is to have someone like Hassan who talks about lifting heavy weights. Like, that is, like, ultimately, that is what we need. We need progressive economic policies.
To the sick, the people with leprosy, the prostitutes, the down and outs. The whole image I have of Jesus is the person who was compassionate, that helped the poor, the downtrodden, and the weak. It actually deeply offends me, to be honest, that Donald Trump pretends to be Christian. He could not be less of an image of Jesus.
If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her. You know?
Stop it. Oh, it's so weird. Stop. You know what? You are sick. What's the favorite thing you have in common with your father?
Either real estate or golf.
Donald, with your daughter?
Well, I was going to say sex, but I can't relate that.
So, look, I want to give you a silver line in this situation. Trump's won. The right have fucking dominated. But there is an opportunity here for young lads. If you are a geezer, right, maybe you go to the gym, maybe you're into your sports, you like your, I don't know, your fucking lad stuff, and you're on the left. This is your moment to fucking step up, to be that aspirational figure to young lads that young men can aspire to be like. Let's be honest. Historically, men have a capacity to do awful things. We also have a capacity to do incredible things. I don't know what it is about us guys, but you get a group of lads together and they can just do things. They can build things. I remember me and my mates when we were young.
I mean, this is just humans in general. It's not like an inherent quality to men where it's like, oh, there's something about if you get 5 men in a room together, they're either going to kill each other or they're going to build the Eiffel Tower in the next 2 hours.
Right, none of us had jobs because we didn't want to do all that. But voluntarily, we would go up the woods every day pretty much and build this incredible course up in the trees. It's mad. I'm so glad I could show you this footage because it's sat in my archives and I have no reason to show it. So somehow I found a way. We used to do this. We'd go out in the rain. We didn't even have proper tools. We were using shitty little saws, but we did it because we were lads with a mission to just make something sick. That was it. Like, that was fundamentally it. However, that same exact energy has led historically to horrific things. Men, I would say men have often been behind the best and the worst things of history. Starting the slave trade.
Okay, I mean, this is dumb. Let's skip to Jordan Peterson. Kind of curious, what is this clip? Okay, I'm sorry. It's just like, if you're going to say men are behind the best and the worst things in history, that's like a tautological statement. Are you saying there's something specific, innate quality in men that's not in women? Because it's people in general. Guess what? There were female Nazis too, okay? Yes, men are more violent on average because
the classical wisdom of the Western Judeo-Christian tradition, and that's absolutely appalling because that's what the bloody institution was there for to begin with, and that's what it's supposed to be doing.
There is a reason why academics tend to lean to the left, of why people who spend all of their time and effort and energy to studying sociology and how societies form, how politics affects people, there is a reason they tend to come out on the left. The ultra-powerful will always suppress the powerless. That is the story of forever. That is, history has shown us that time and time again. And what's more is the data, the facts. We have data to show things like inequality and crime. We have to just make convincing, strong arguments. Not condemning people, not shaming people, but we have to go into those MAGA spaces and challenge their beliefs fucking head on. And don't think that people are too stupid. I don't believe that. Like, think about it. How many young lads can regurgitate Jordan Peterson's talking points against feminism verbatim? Like, they sat there and fucking rehearsed them in the mirror. Like, for instance, the gender pay gap. Like, they'll say instantly, they'll regurgitate the Jordan Peterson talking point. Women are more agreeable and therefore they accept lower pay, and so they get paid less than men. But there is rebuttals to those arguments, right? Sociologists are not stupid. They understand that women behave different to men. A great video from Unlearning Economics talks about this. The amount of the gender pay gap that can be accredited to this agreeableness thing, the most generous reading on that data is about 20%. 20% of the pay gap is made up of this agreeability argument. 80% on many other factors. Again, I'll link that video. There are rebuttals out there. There are reasons why academics have come to conclusions that they have, but we need to get those arguments out there and into those spaces. Teach people these rebuttals, how to argue your drunk uncle at Christmas. Arm them with the ammunition. We need to educate people and rebuild a trust in institutions and trust in academia.
Why did I decide to build an online university?
Yeah, once again, when we're talking about how the left is being attacked because, like, women are inherently inferior than men, so we must rebut these arguments wherever we see them. We must go into these mega spaces, these conservative hellholes, and say that women aren't getting paid less because they're worse than men. It's these, like, biases and discriminations in the marketplace which is causing them to get paid less. Like, does he not, like, I feel like that is the opposite point than what he was trying to make earlier in the video. Earlier in the video, he was saying that men, like progressive men, should stand up and be role models to young men who are like interested in dumb young men stuff, like climbing trees. I'm going to start a climbing a tree channel where I'm like, look at these trees, aren't they beautiful? Shouldn't we try to protect the environment? I don't know, something stupid like that. That is the way to almost like foist politics onto someone, or have a message and then have that message be supported by your politics, but not have like your politics be first and foremost. So you like have a message and you're like, yeah, I love trees and I'm a leftist, like but I'm going to be talking about trees most of the time. But every now and then I'm going to be like, I love trees and I love having this mild winter, but like, doesn't global warming suck? Just something simple like that. That seems to me to be the opposite of someone going into a conservative TV show and being like, you know, global warming is real, right? There's arguments, you're making arguments like against the validity of global warming. Let me bring you all of the arguments of global warming. So I feel like we're kind of talking past each other. And what I will say is, there's room for debate if that debate is in service of the two things that I was talking about earlier: making yourself engaging and making yourself creating like casting as wide a net as possible. So if you are like talking to someone like Jordan Peterson, and maybe there's people that aren't fully incorporated into the cult of conservatism and Jordan Peterson's cult, and you can like go onto his show, you're casting a wide net, and then people will see your content and be like, okay, this guy actually made a lot of sense, I'm going to start watching him. But guess what? If like the people that are in that cult are going to see you, and every single thing that comes out of your mouth, they're going to think that you're dumb and that doesn't make any sense. So there's actually no correcting the record on arguments, because people don't think that way. Like, people that support Jordan Peterson don't think logically through the things that he says. You can try to catch people before they go down into the Jordan Peterson rabbit hole, but you're not going to be able to successfully pull those people out. The only way to pull people out of rabbit holes and cults is to completely cut them out of every single aspect of that cult and isolate them, and then like bathe them in progressive policies, essentially. Bathe them in information when they've been living in like the darkness of misinformation their entire time. And that is extremely hard. Like, that is straight up impossible to do when we're talking about communication on a mass scale, and even on an interpersonal scale, that's extremely hard to do as well. It'd be as effectively like stopping your parents from going on Facebook or watching Fox News all day. You would have to cut them out of that completely and sign them up for like I don't know, like an old person's communist club that's in your city. Something like that. See what you can do. But what am I saying here? You cannot actually change people's minds by debating them out of it. Again, you can make yourself more engaging and you can increase the scope of your reach by debating people, but you're not going to change people's minds. That's my point. And when Jimmy the Giant says you need to be able to debate the gender pay gap to like correct the record on this, it's like, okay, should you be able to debate that? Yes, so that you can try to, again, like make people engaged in your content, but it's not going to change people's minds to do it. So again, it's not exactly right what he's saying.
Well,
there is a crisis now in higher education. We have a groupthink emerging, and that warps the entire academic enterprise.
Why does the right constantly have to ridicule academics? Why do they do it? Why do they say they're overrun by Marxists? Because if people read the literature, they would know that these conservatives are often full of shit on a lot of things. We have to teach people to have healthy skepticism. Skepticism's important, right? You can't just take everything you read at face value. I call it the MAGA lot. Sorry, I'm being a dick. I don't mean that. People can be wrong. Institutions can be wrong. But there is a difference between having healthy skepticism, believing that institutions can be both right and wrong on different issues at different times, and having unhealthy skepticism, where you assume that all institutions in every facet of life are always fundamentally wrong. That is the big thing we have to attack, is that conspiratorial brain. It's very, very hard to attack that because they fundamentally don't but trust anything. And I don't know how you solve that one, I'll be honest. I would say partly it would be to
Right, so once again, like when we're talking about attacking the conspiratorial brain, it's not that you're going to try to fix people that are conspiratorial minded. You're trying to prevent people from getting into that conspiratorial mindset and also give them an alternative, so that instead of being like seduced by QAnon, they'd be watching Hassan or Majority Report or something like that. Or me. Watch me. Give me money. I want money.
teach real examples of corruption that we know factually that have happened. Teach people about think tanks, the Adam Smith Institute, the Heritage Foundation, the Koch brothers, these ultra wealthy billionaires who pump funding and push policies to politicians that literally have affected your life to this day, that are provable, that there isn't speculation, there isn't this hidden cabal that we'll never be able to prove. There is facts, there is evidence for this that is concrete. And finally, what I really believe is like a good ambition that the left need to do, especially for young men, to attract young men, is to look at what the right did to immigration. I'm going to make other videos talking about it and debunking certain aspects. You know, there are problems, there are issues that occur, but what they did to immigration was take it and push it to the forefront, the absolute forefront of all politics, to the point that it is acceptable for Donald Trump to say that
in Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Even when they accept that that was a lie, they double down and say it was a meme to try and get us to talk about immigration.
The media didn't care about the carnage wrought by these policies until we turned it into a meme about cats.
Purpose of this video is not to ascertain whether Haitian migrants are actually eating cats, dogs or geese. And as we all know, Haitians are renowned for their totally normal behaviour. It's about the fact that the claims alone can spark a magical meme moment.
A racist lie is acceptable if it pushes the conversation on immigration. The left need to push the topic of inequality. That is the bread and butter. Inequality. We have so much data, so much proof on how inequality negatively affects societies. The ultra wealthy buying up all of the assets, pricing out the middle class and the working class, and making the poor get...
Yeah, this is exactly what I've been saying since the beginning of the video. So honestly, good job, Jimmy. This is like pretty much exactly, I agree with everything you've been saying. And then the one thing that I would add to this is the left has been pushing the narrative of inequality. That's pretty much like the heart and soul of every leftist channel that is out there. The inherent inequality that is increasing between the workers and the capital owners. The issue is, it's not that the left isn't pushing inequality, it's that the politicians that claim to represent the left are not pushing this message of inequality. So maybe the left could try to do more to get politicians like that, but ultimately it's like, we are kind of reliant on the Democrats. I don't know what's going to happen if the Democrats refuse to shift left on this, but we have people like Bernie Sanders calling for the abandonment of like donors in primary elections to try to get the candidates to shift more left. Bernie Sanders calling out the Democrats for like abandoning this kind of inequality message, but I'll just let Jimmy take it away and finish this off.
Poorer. If we can turn people's attention to that, then I think we might see some success, some real success. And it achieves another side, which unfortunately in this era of populist politics we have to go down, is that it is anti-establishment. The vote for Trump was a vote against the establishment. It's always been that. The vote for Brexit was a vote against the establishment. We have seen mainstream politics, left and right, has failed us since the financial crash in many ways. The lady from, I forget her name, the lady from Navarra Media, she said it really well. Also follow me, I'm at Jim the Giant on Twitter. Ash Sarkar, she said, in the last 4 years, American food prices have gone up by 22%. Like, I'm sorry, but running a campaign on the threat to democracy when people are unable to afford staple groceries was completely bonkers. The establishment has failed us. We need an anti-establishment message, and inequality is that. Fight the ultra-powerful. Fight the people actually causing problems in the world. Don't fight your fucking Haitian neighbor who probably has a very similar life to you, has all the same worries and problems. Fight the real culprits of this, the culprits that have been the culprits forever, the ultra-wealthy.
I hope that this is the last Democratic nominee who says no to Joe Rogan. Like, even if you have to go to the studio.
I would go further than that, Ryan. Yeah. You need your own Joe Rogan is the bigger point. That's the bigger problem. Not
well,
that
Democrats had their own Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan endorsed Bernie Sanders in 2020.
But that's it. That's my thoughts post-election. I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't think Trump will be a fascist. He is stoking the fascist fires. Maybe a few presidents down the line could go down that. He is sowing distrust in institutions. It's very dangerous. I personally don't think Trump is going to be that person. I think the institutions will hold up for now. But whatever happens, we need to go and fight. We need to do our thing. This is not the time to give up. This is the time to be better and improve and fight back. Let me know what you think. Leave a like, subscribe.
Yeah, good video. That was a good video. In terms of Donald Trump being fascist, I mean, he is a fascist, and he's doing his best at dismantling all of the institutions that were holding him back. The institutions that he likes are the ones he has control over, like the oligarchs, basically. Elon Musk is an institution in and of himself right now. But he is going to get rid of institutions like the National Labor Relations Board that kind of reins in companies, like the APA, which reins in companies, regulates companies, like the IRS, which reins in corporations, reins in companies. So he's going to dismantle all of that stuff. So yeah, unfortunately, like, Donald Trump is kind of a fascist. But anyway, that was a good video. And I think, like, the difference between what Jimmy the Giant is doing and what Shoehead is doing is, like, Shoehead is, she's like, libs are so cringe. We need to, and then she's like not relating the cringe libs to the populist messaging at all. She's just saying, like, libs and leftists are cringe and they're driving people out. And there's a huge difference between saying that leftists are driving men out of the party compared to saying that Republicans and conservative personalities are inviting leftists to join their party, because I think that is like a really big difference. Like, no one is going to be looking at left videos, like progressive videos and progressive content creators, and be like, this is stupid, I'm going to become a conservative. The only reason Shoehead would say that is if she's consuming conservative media and thinking that, oh, look, conservative media is showing me leftists being cringe, and that's, like, they're justifying me staying in conservative media. That's why, like, because you can say that argument against conservatives too. It's the conservatives that believe in God. It's conservatives that say having sex with your wife is gay. It's conservatives that shoot up beer bottles. They're cringe as fuck, and you never look at conservatives and say that they're driving out young people to join the leftists. Like, it's a two-way street when we talk about who's cringe and who's not cringe. And I thought Jimmy the Giant did a great job of explaining the strategies that conservatives and conservative media use to try to keep people stuck in their bubbles, and specifically men and young men stuck in their conservative media bubbles, and kind of what the leftists can do to create their own spheres of influence on young men. And once again, I don't think you can really rip people out of those media bubbles. You can just try to prevent people from entering them in the first place. So anyway, good job there. Oh yeah, I wanted to look at this. Comedian Daniel Sloss tells men to hold other men accountable. Are you ready for some liberal cringe? Just call me Shoehead, because this is going to be cringy.
So how do we fix that? How does society, how do we fix this? How do we stop this happening? It's all I've been thinking about for the past year, over and over and over again. How do you fix this? How do you stop this? How do you prevent this from happening? The only thing I can think of is it has to involve us. And by us, I mean men. Now, to the women in the room, I know you know this. None of this is new information to you. You've lived your life, you've got your experiences, and your voices are more important and necessary in this discussion than mine. That being said, I would still like to lend my voice to the discussion. And to the men in the room, I want to make something crystal clear. This isn't an attack. I'm not accusing you of anything, and more importantly, I'm not accusing your friends of anything. I'm just trying to tell you my experience, and this is my experience. I knew this man for 8 years, and he fucking did it. There are monsters amongst us and they look like us. If you are sick of the narrative that is currently going on about men, feel free to change it, but you have to get involved. Don't make the same mistake I did for years, which was just sitting back and be like, well, I'm not part of the problem, therefore I must be part of the solution, because that's just not how this fucking shit works. I believe, and deep down I know that most men are good. Of course we are. But when 1 in 10 men are shit and the other 9 do nothing, they might as well not fucking be there. Being good on the inside counts for absolutely fuck all. You have to actively be good and get involved. Instead of having this fucking hero complex of being like, I'm going to beat up, fucking prevent one, stop one, because I know it can be done.
He's talking about like doing sexual violence right now, like rape.
Because I know how I fucking failed at it. Because if I'm being 100% honest with myself, were there signs in my friend's behavior over the years towards women that I ignored? The answer is yes. And that's on me until the day I die.
This is all cut up. It's kind of hard to follow.
Boys, get involved. I can't do much. I just won't do nothing anymore. And I'm just suggesting that you do this. To the men in the room, I want to make something crystal clear. This is not meant to be a fucking lecture or someone on the high horse telling you something. It's a man who fell off his fucking horse. It's a man who fucking failed. And these are just the things I wish I'd known a couple of years ago. If you think this does not affect the women in your life, talk to them after this show and watch your world crumble before your very eyes. If you think this does not affect the women in your life, it's not because it's not happening to them, it's because they don't trust you enough to talk to you about it. So
that was like commentary on rape culture. Right? Honestly, that wasn't like that bad. But I guess it was kind of irrelevant to what we were talking about. Okay, speaking of men and marriage, does witchcraft invalidate my marriage? By Frere Boniface Hicks. I think this guy's
Roy,
like related to Bon Iver somehow.
Last name, because this sounds like a very personal question. If your wife reveals to you that she bewitched your relationship, cursed you, maintained her beliefs in witchcraft, and read your fortune with tarot cards both before she joined the church and after, are you obliged to at least pursue an annulment? Is it okay for your...
Dude, I love these fucking insane religious fundamentalist Catholics. You can write any kind of post to them and be like, I'm a witch, I put a curse on you, and they'll piss themselves. That's so funny. Oh my god, dude. The juxtaposition between this 20 seconds of like over the top, I'm a witch, I put a curse on you, I bewitched our marriage, I've been lying to you this entire time. Should I at least pursue an annulment? It's like so over the top, and then the reaction is the bare minimum. I gotta run that back. This plays like a fucking SNL skit.
Maintained her beliefs in witchcraft and read your fortune with tarot cards both before she joined the church and after. Are you obliged to at least pursue an annulment? Is it okay for your soul if for some reason the church doesn't acknowledge the obvious nullity? Also, a quick checklist of what the faithful servant should confess.
I love these religious fundamentalist zealot Catholics. They're like, do I have the proper paperwork so that I'm not going to go to hell? Does it stain my soul if the church does not recognize the annulment I have with my witch ass wife?
After the annulment. So do with that what you will.
So it sounds like that all happened even before the marriage.
Before and after.
Before
it sounds
and
like
after.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would certainly say separation seems like a pretty good approach.
A Catholic priest advocating for separation? Why doesn't he just try to do an exorcism on the witch? Like, aren't witches supposed to be like possessed by demons too? Or maybe I'm mixing up my supernatural evil spirits.
And yeah, and an annulment. I mean, how obliged is maybe a little bit strong, but
yeah.
I think it's certainly advisable.
Yeah, so it sounds like she's revealing this to him recently.
I love how they're taking this so seriously. She's like, I read our tarot cards and I put a curse upon you before and after our marriage. Wahaha. He's like, oh my god, guys. She's literally got a cauldron bubbling out back. Can you get to this rather quickly, please?
She reveals to you that she bewitched your relationship, cursed you, maintained her beliefs in witchcraft, and read your fortune with tarot cards both before she joined. So she joined the church at some point, but she's still continuing these practices. It sounds like these things have been revealed to him after the fact now. We're not in a place to make any kind of judgment, and the church presumes all marriage is valid until proven otherwise.
That's right.
What about as far as fear is concerned? Like, should a Christian be afraid of curses? One thing I noticed while reading the scriptures is the scriptures don't treat curses lightly, even though...
Oh my god. These guys would be cute if they weren't so evil and so powerful in this country. Like, they have a direct line to the president's ear. And these are the guys that are getting empowered by Trump's win.
We might, in our modern sophistication. The Bible doesn't treat these things lightly. Yeah.
How do you mean that?
Well, I mean, it's a real thing that happens. Witchcraft exists. Curses apparently exist. But I just think in our modern scientific age, we tend to dismiss witches or curses as just sort of silly things or pretend things.
Yeah, certainly not pretend. I like to make the analogy, a curse is a maleddiction, which would be the opposite of a benediction, so the opposite of a blessing. And just as we know very well, just because you bless somebody, they don't suddenly become Catholic. When you curse somebody, their life doesn't fall apart. So what is that? And so
it's almost like you're saying that blessings and curses don't do anything, and it depends on the person, right? If you get blood, like, I'm sorry to say, guys, prayer doesn't work. They've tested it out, and if you pray for someone, they heal at the same rate as the people that aren't getting prayed for.
Place that I appreciate Neil Lozano makes a real point of that in Unbound, to say a curse has to have a place to land in us. And then what can I do? I can't do anything about the one who's doing the cursing necessarily, but I can do something about the potential landing place in me, which can be a place of fear or a place of woundedness, or a place I can bring that place into communion. I can bring that place before the Lord.
Yeah.
So
certainly this person could consider contacting the diocese about
the friar or the monk or whatever. Yeah, I guess he's a friar. Is like, well, curses and blessings only work so far as the person has an openness in their heart to receive the curses and blessings. It depends on you for your inside. It's like the scroll in Kung Fu Panda. You are the secret ingredient. And this guy's like, So, they should probably get a pope to do an exorcism, right? It's like, bro, like, no, I'm saying that curses and blessings aren't real. Like, read between the lines, my man.
A possible annulment. We don't know, so we can't speak to it.
Right.
Hey. That was insane. Okay, are there any other good clips on this? So this is this two-hour podcast with this guy. Hope in the Church, Eucharistic Congress, spiritual warfare. That could be interesting. Isolation and 7 deadly sins, crossing boundaries, the grace of suffering, healing. How do we purify our motives? Curses and witchcraft, beard routine. Discipling children? Is that supposed to be disciplining children? Changing churches, Marian consecration, controversy in the church, discerning marriage, rap. It's kind of boring. What does this guy have? Oh, no timestamps for this guy. Yes, this was only This was only this was only yesterday. Well, I don't know if I should listen to this if it has no timestamps. Are we going to be able to find something interesting? This was from yesterday. Do we have anything else that could be cool? How Islam led me back to Christ with Charbel Reich. From Mormon to Catholic with Stephen Johnson. Conversion to Catholicism, the Papacy and Cameron. Interview with an exorcist. Okay, let's just try to find something interesting with this guy. What is he saying?
In the back of your mind, and really in the forefront of your mind.
Okay.
And you always ought to check twice and a third time and a fourth time to make sure that you're approaching it in the right spirit, because of the nature of his office, He's a representative of Christ. He doesn't represent us.
To think that all of this that's going on is getting in the way of our ministry. And he said, but no, this is our ministry. And I like that. It's sort of like if you have a sick spouse, you think, well, gosh, let's get this over with so we can live our marriage. It's like, no, this is marriage. Maybe something like that, except there's maybe an injustice being done by somebody that might, well, there's an injustice in the first case, but not with the suffering spouse. But
yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, suffering, I like to put it, the role it plays in divine providence, in salvation history, to use the pompous theologian's jargon, is it's a feature, it's not a bug. It's permitted by, it's not directly willed by God, but it's permitted because of the good he's drawing out of it. And this is why Catholics are familiar with thinking of Christ primarily on the cross. Now, of course, he's the risen Christ, and that's the end of the story. But we're not at the end of the story. I mean, we're in the difficult middle part of the story. And I think that's the reason why the crucifix has become a central symbol for Christ in the Catholic tradition. It's precisely because this is God who sort of got down on his knees with us and is suffering alongside us. And it's also a reminder that, look, this is what you should expect. It's like, Christ tells... he tells the disciples that in the world you'll have tribulation.
Oh my God. Okay. These guys are so funny, but I need timestamps. I can't just raw dog this shit. I'm sorry, guys. The mustache is good.
When you become an annual supporter, we will send you this free pints of...
about my former beliefs that most my parents don't know, and the nuns that taught me don't know, and all that kind of thing. It can be kind of exhilarating. I mean, looking back on it, it's definitely what the kids call cringe, because I haven't thought that way for quite a while.
Do you know I actually went through a period of solipsism as a teenager without knowing the word?
Really?
Yeah, no, weird.
Literal solipsism.
I mean, I didn't think it through a great deal, but yeah, I actually remember being really worried. I did a couple of very cringe things. I remember standing in my room, and in my room was afraid that everything else outside of my room was nothing. And I would open my door quickly to catch the void, but I never could. And I remember telling one of my best mates in library class that I was afraid he didn't exist. And he was really worried about me and said, I promise, like I do. And I think I said, well, that's what you would say.
How long did that last? Your
I don't think it was terribly serious. I think it may have just, like you were saying, the exhilaration of a new idea.
Okay, great. How long have we been going? Okay. So this is something that I've been wanting to do for a while since I made this channel. So let's get into it. Let's talk about Arcane. Okay, so listen, this is something that I've been wanting to do for a while. I've been wanting to talk about the politics of Arcane because I watched Arcane. It was a great show. And guess what? There were a lot of really cool politics involved with it. Season 2 just came out. Even more cool politics. And I want to take this opportunity to have a little bit of fun. Just talk about some general overarching ideas that I have with the politics of Arcane. What it does right, what it does a little bit weird, how realistic is it, what are the politics of in world, and then what are the effective politics of the writers of the story. So for those of you that don't know, Arcane is basically set up in this magical world where there are characters living in this undercity called Zon, and then there's this very egalitarian, wealthy, utopian city called Piltover. And in this frame, you have the Zonites going into Piltover and they're doing crime. And when I watched Arcane, the first time I watched Arcane was actually it was actually probably a few months ago. And it was I watched Arcane in the context of Israel's ongoing genocide over Palestine. And as soon as I saw it, I'm like, this has so many parallels between Israel and Palestine. Palestine is it's not a city, but it is this very small country bordered up against this technological regional superpower in Israel. And just like how the city of Piltover has this technology and they have a utopia and everyone there is considered equal, but they do have this very oppressive class over the people that are living in living across their borders. If you live on the wrong side of the border, then you are oppressed. And the actual opening of Arcane opens on this violence being met out. So it was a violent resistance movement trying to fight for equal rights for the Undercity, trying to fight for emancipation essentially from the oppression of Piltover. And we see the very first scene of the show, we see this violence and the dramatic repercussions of this. And you can see like how much death and destruction there is caused by all of this violence, and the characters are traumatized, and this trauma causes even more radicalization. So these characters are traumatized, they grow up in an oppressive system, and the way that they fight back against this oppressive system is by engaging in like criminal activity to go against it. So they steal from them, they manufacture like illicit drugs. So I thought this was like pretty cool. So this is a shot of them looking out over the city of Piltover, and let's see, how do we get out of this? And then this is a shot at them looking out over the Undercity. So it's very like framed similarly, but you can see that the Undercity simply is like more run down, it's more ramshackled, it doesn't have all of the technological advancements that Piltover has. But yeah, the main conflict comes into like this technology that they create in the Overcity, and then there's crime in the Undercity where like these different criminal factions are competing against each other, and they produce like an illicit drug to try to fight up against them. And then what are the politics that we have here? Well, the politics are oppression will lead to resistance, and that cycle will continue forever, essentially. There is a strong through line in the politics of Arcane that war is never the answer. And if we go to Arc 2, what do we got here? War is never the answer. Fighting wars will only bring about more violence to you, and that will create more war. And I'm going to try to relate this back to real world examples as much as possible. So we have, let's see, can I find a cool image here? I'm sure I can. Everything looks so good in this show, but here's a good example. So you have oppression, and people's lives are horrible, and they are running out of options. They tried diplomatic options, and they tried violent options, and now there's like this slow, unstable, strained peace where the government of Piltover has these like backdoor connections with the ruling bodies of Zon, of the Undercity, where they can send, like, they have these backdoor channels of communication so that they can have this like unstable peace, but they're still dealing with the most radical elements of these they're dealing with the most radical elements of the Undercity, because when, like, this is something that we talked about yesterday, where when there's oppression, the most radical groups are going to rise to the top, because they're the groups that are going to be the most willing to actually fight back. They are going to get the support of the people. So when we're talking about like the different radical groups in the Undercity, you have guys like Silco, who is the main bad guy essentially in the story, and he, at least in season 1, and he runs a criminal enterprise, and his main goal is the emancipation of his city and fighting against his main goal is to amass enough power to get freedom for his city and remove the oppression of Piltover. Ultimately, he does do a push to try to get his dream achieved, and he is beaten down. Like that's the first scene that we see where this is their push, and they're met with overwhelming violence and just completely destroyed. And at the end of the show, this criminal mastermind that represents essentially the government of the underworld realizes that he simply cannot win. These groups have too much trading partners. They are too technologically advanced. They have too much support from the rest of the world. They have made themselves a very important ally to the rest of the world. And thus, because they are so important, they are like, no one cares about the Undercity at all. So it is extremely similar to what we are seeing in Israel and Palestine, where Israel is an extremely important trading partner with the United States. They import a lot from the United States. They export a lot to the United States as well. And Palestine simply doesn't have that same kind of economic impact to the United States that Israel has. And because of that situation, Israel can pretty much do whatever they want to Palestine. And the Palestinians have found themselves on their own, pretty much. And it is extremely similar in this situation where the people of Piltover are getting support from the rest of the world because they're a valued trading partner because of the technology they've created. And because of this value, no one cares at all about the Zonites. It's like the people from the Undercity. And what's interesting is this is an extremely unstable relationship where Piltover just relies on Zon always being there. They rely on the Undercity existing there forever. And at the end of the show, you actually do get this explosion of violence. So the politics of the show is that violence begets violence. Cycles of violence will always perpetuate themselves. And at the end of the day, we started with a violent attack from the oppressed class against the oppressors. And then the season ended with a violent attack from the oppressed class against the oppressors again. And that violent act in season 2 caused an even greater violent act done back onto the oppressed class, and that cycle of violence continues. So, what is so good about Arcane? I haven't talked about the best aspects of the story, which are the emotional beats. The characters are all amazing. But what I did want to talk about, and the point of this segment, is the politics of it. How the writers get the politics so correct. They have the classic, literal Undercity versus the Overcity, the haves versus the have-nots. It's just the most classic conflict when we're talking about politics throughout all time. We can even talk about how the upper city of Piltover, that economic utopia, is an allegory for capitalism, and it's an allegory for the capitalists living at the top of the system. All of the wealth is concentrated at the top, and in terms of the capitalist perspective, they are living in a utopia where everyone is happy. But what they do not understand is what they might choose to not understand is that the system that they are living in and experiencing is inherently unstable, and they are extracting wealth from the oppressed lower class. So, and I think that's what this story does so well. It sets up this dichotomy of the haves and the have-nots, and it can be applied to situations like capitalism, the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat, and it can also be applied to colonization and struggle for emancipation, like Israel versus Palestine, where there are resistance fighters pushing back to try to free themselves. And I just wanted to talk about that because I think that like this is a great show with great world building, and the politics are actually very solid into what happens. That's only season 1. So what I like is the in-world politics of Arcane are realistic. The systems that the writers of the show created function like systems in real life function, where they have realistic driving forces, and then the effects of these systems are also realistic, where it does drive poverty, and that poverty creates violence, and there are radical groups that rise up to resist the oppressive upper class. And then those radical groups create violence, which just brings more violence back upon these groups, creating even more radicalization. That is a system that exists in the real world, and it's just extremely realistic. And then so they do a great job of creating systems, like political systems that work, are realistic, and you can find examples of them everywhere you look. The other thing that I like about Arcane is its effective politics. Like, because it is displaying real life politics, it has good, like, the show writers wrote in good politics into this. So, for example, I read the book Atlas Shrugged, and Atlas Shrugged had incorrect political systems in it. The political systems that existed in Atlas Shrugged are fantastical, and that was supposed to be a grounded world, but it had fantastical political elements. This is a fantasy world, but it has grounded political elements, and that's what makes its world so believable. And because its politics are so realistic and so grounded, effectively, I agree with what the story is trying to say. I agree with it saying that fascism, violent suppression of uprisings, is not the way to go. And at the end of the story, spoiler alert, but at the end of the story, the Undercity does achieve equal rights, and in the story it's portrayed as a good thing. It's portrayed as an end to the cycle of violence. And I think that, I mean, not to get glib, but I think that people that are concerned about ending capitalism, concerned about ending the apartheid state that Israel is doing right now, ending the genocide, should honestly watch this show. Because if you find yourself agreeing with the people of Zon, the people of the Undercity that are fighting for freedom and simply do not want to be oppressed and gassed out by the citizens of Piltover, by the oppressive class, then you should recognize that that is the exact same plight that Palestinians are experiencing, that South Africans were experiencing, where they are just getting discriminated against because of where they live. And you can never be treated like a real human being if you come from these areas. And so I think the show does a great job of setting up this dichotomy, and not only like creating realistic systems to explain the different perspectives and how the cycle of violence perpetuates itself, but it also does a great job of showing the resolutions and the solutions to these conflicts, and showing that it is not an endless cycle, and you do not win by winning a war. You win by ending the war. So I know it's a Friday, we're having fun, and I just wanted to end on this light note. If you guys liked Arcane and you want me to talk about it more, let me know in the comment section below, and I can do a way more in-depth video actually breaking down specific examples of story beats of like the different politics and the different stories. There's so much you can get into. I haven't even really talked about the competing factions within each city, or the added presence of the Noxian faction when it comes in and kind of does a military coup in Piltover. There's that aspect to it too. The whole idea of how fascism took hold because Piltover had this unstable system of liberals ruling it, and that unstable system led to a terror attack, which created fascism and created an even stronger military pushback against that. So it's like you also have the aspect of liberalism leading to fascism. I didn't even really get into the whole capitalism and how the buildings of Piltover and the industry of Piltover will pollute the undercity and create horrible conditions for the essentially an allegory for the working class, right? You are literally living underneath the capitalists in their gilded towers. That is what Piltover is. It is an allegory for the haves and the have-nots, and the politics of it are so good and so grounded. I just had to get that off my chest. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video today. It was a fun one. Try to keep it light, and this is something that I've wanted to talk about. Arcane, great show. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know if you want more Arcane content. And otherwise, thanks for watching, everyone. Please like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and have a great rest of your day. See ya.